Two-headed right, two heads are better than one-headed right. Two heads are better than one-headed right. Two heads are better than one-headed right. Two heads are better than one.
Hello, welcome back to our channel. My name is Evalyn.
My name is Monty.
And together we are the Two-Headed Writer, a father-daughter writing team originally from Stillwater, Oklahoma, although I'm here at the University of Iowa studying English and creative writing.
And every week we get together to catch up one another on where we're at with our writing. We have this conversation online since obviously everyone's not at home. And we talk about the books we're writing individually, the book we are writing together, Evelyn's classwork, and whatever else comes up interesting to talk about in terms of writing. So we hope you'll join us on our writing journey, and maybe we'll be able to help you along with yours. So let's get quickly caught up on where we're at with our writing. Evelyn, you have recently submitted some stuff and you're still working on some stuff to submit.
Yes, I'm actually, right after we film this, going to go to an event that's hosted by one of the magazines that I'm submitting to. The deadline is midnight tonight, and they're having a piece for piece thing where you can come in and have your pieces workshopped last minute.
Oh,
So
cool.
I'm gonna go to that and take my short story that I've been working on to get a little bit more feedback for some people who are less familiar with my writing than you or my friends.
Aren't you scared that they're going to say something that's going to make you not be able to finish it before midnight?
I don't think so. I'm pretty confident on most of it. There are just a couple of things that I've changed between now and when you last read it based on feedback from you and Olivia. And I just want to get a third opinion. I think they're supposed to be bringing in some of the MFA people to help. And so that'll be cool.
What else did you submit, and when will you hear back about how you did?
I'm assuming that I'll hear back soon, hopefully before the month is up, but I didn't get any solid dates on like, this is when we'll tell you. For Inklet, I'm actually a reader, so I will be getting a bunch of drama submissions to read, and I'll be helping with that selection process in this next week.
So I am assuming that on your own 2 novels that you've been working on, that you haven't made much progress because of these submission deadlines coming up.
No, I have not been tracking my progress on those. I have had a couple of brainstormy things for the outline that I'm working on. There was actually a short story that I wrote part of and was reading back through because I thought I might finish that and submit it, and I realized that it actually could work better as a sequence of events that takes place within the novel. And so I added those plot points into my outline, which is exciting because now it's the first full sequence that I know like what exactly happens in it.
Cool. Is there anything particularly interesting happening in any of your classes that you want to mention?
Not really.
Right now.
A lot of
Yeah, you're not taking any classes this semester where you'd be asked to write fiction, are you? So that kind of, yeah, that's kind of not your wheelhouse.
You mentioned throughout our conversations this week that you've started working on your own novel again.
Yes, I have, because I caught up to you on comments with our novel. And then for a couple of days I needed something to do, so I've gone back to mine. I have finished re-outlining it and actually went back into the first chapter and revised, totally redid the opening sequence. That's my weakness always. The way this chapter starts is terrible. The way this book starts is terrible. You have to rewrite it. So, you know, opening sequence of the opening chapter is totally different now. It's a small amount of progress, but I'm on my way. Yeah.
Yay. And then, yeah, when it comes to our book, he's right. I've been very busy with revisions, so I think I only read 2 chapters this week, which is not super productive on my part, but next week I will be back to my normal 300 words a day, 2 chapters every other day. schedule.
Yeah, we're getting near the end of part 3. So we are making pretty good progress. We should be through the book fairly soon.
So I've been keeping a list of things that we talked about very briefly in previous episodes that I ended up cutting for time that I thought we should revisit as broader topics in later videos. So today we're going to be discussing one of those. So about 2 weeks ago, we had a conversation about who was more similar to the main character in our shared novel, Macy. And that made it into the video, but what got cut was a conversation that we had after that about character building in general. And so I wanted to revisit the topic for you guys today. It's pertinent to me right now because in my outline process, I'm specifically trying to get to know these 2 characters that I've created.
What kinds of challenges are you running into there?
Part of my outline process, I have a notebook for each project that I work on where I jot down all of my ideas, little snippets of dialogue, every bit of information about the characters that I come up with. And so I have pages and pages of little notes that I'm trying to synthesize into actual like character pages where all of the information that I need is like on there, which is something that we tried to do with our shared book and did it with varying levels of success.
Yes, I remember you being a little bit obsessed with like, oh, I found a quiz for Macy, and and we're gonna go through and answer all these questions for Macy. And things like, what would you want for Christmas, or what color are your socks, or quite questions that get your imagination working, but might be like inconsequential to the storytelling aspect.
I think that it's really important to get to know your character as well as you would know like one of your friends in real life. It helps me be able to sit down and actually write scenes with them in their voice if I know all of these little details about them. And with our book, since we were both writing from the points of views of those 2 characters, I wanted us to be on the same page and have the same level of familiarity with each of them.
Well, and it makes a lot of sense. It's just that I think we decided a lot of things about Macy that I would never remember if you asked me. I still hope I'm able to write in her voice, but yeah, it's I see where you're coming from on that.
In my contemporary story, it's going to, for the purposes of the plot, have to be a dual point of view story, which means that I need to come up with 2 distinct characters with 2 distinct voices. They have to have separate interests, but they also have to still believably be friends / potentially something more. And I want both of them to be relatable human beings because they're in kind of an unrelatable situation. They have decided that they're going to help each other out by going on a series of fake dates to try to diagnose what issues they have in relationships. And that's something that wouldn't normally happen in real life.
Right there, you said the thing that like I would think is key to starting to give your characters character traits is apparently they both have trouble dating. They could always blame the other person, but what is it about themselves that's kind of making all of their dates leave them eventually? Have you come up with character flaws that would make them undateable?
Well, the basis is each of them is bad at communication, and I'm trying to separate it out into 2 distinct versions of that. So I have it where one of them is very shy and just bad at like taking feelings that they have and translating them into actions, kind of stuck in the like crush phase all the time. Other has no problem making a move, but does have a problem communicating the actual emotion and desire behind that. So they'll start dating someone and then it never goes beyond like big romantic gestures, and so it kind of, they come off as disinterested because they're bad at open communication about their feelings. So they have opposite issues, which is why they would be able to help each other.
How good are they each at listening?
I'm gonna go with not as good as they should be.
How controlling are they?
What are you doing? Did you find a list of things that you're just reading at me?
It's in my head. I'm thinking of character traits that would make you a good relationship person or a bad relationship person.
So off the top of my head, I'm gonna say that character A, the shy one, oh, they have names. Dorothy, she's the shy one, and she doesn't like not being in control. She wouldn't take the lead on something, but she definitely doesn't like not knowing what's going on. And then James, who is the big romantic gesture guy, likes to take control and doesn't like to share control. And so that would be something they'd have to work on.
What scares each of them the most about interpersonal relationships?
Dorothy's afraid of rejection just straight off the bat. And James is afraid of getting close to someone and then being rejected because they don't like him as a person after they find out his deepest, most innermost thoughts.
What are James's deepest, most innermost thoughts that might put someone off?
He's a sporty kind of dude. I think he runs, is what I'm landed on right now. He's kind of popular. He's kind of fit into this like jock box, but he also really enjoys math and science and wants to study that and like likes the feeling of discovery and like problem solving.
So they'd be like, what? You're a math nerd? I don't want to be seen with you now.
In general, I know a lot of the guys I know struggle with voicing their opinions or interests if they think it's going to make them look less masculine. I wanted to ask you, so you're working on Danica right now, and the Danica Dunn concept came from or was inspired by an older book series called the Danny Dunn series. And so how did that inspiration affect the way that you created your characters for your version of the book?
Yeah, so I was inspired to write sort of a modernized version of Danny Dunn. Of course, I couldn't just grab that same character and rewrite. You know, I mean, that there's copyright issues there for one thing. I decided, well, let me think of this as like, who would Danny Dunn's grandchild be? And not make that an official thing, but just an inspiration thing. Danny he's redheaded, and I mean, this is kind of cliche in the old books from the 1950s. He's redheaded, so he's outgoing, and he's headstrong. That's a word they use a lot for Danny, because he doesn't stop to think. He just acts, and so he gets himself into a lot of trouble that way. He's curious, he's smart, and he's also kind of the glue that puts the friendships together. So there's three friends. There's Danny, and then Joe and Irene. And Joe and Irene are sort of opposites in a lot of ways, and Danny sort of glues them together. First of all, I thought, I want to make my main character a girl. We need to inspire girls to go into STEM subjects more. And that's Danny Dunn is a science themed series, and that's, you know, that was definitely part of my inspiration, so I want to keep that aspect of it. I basically thought of a girl version of Danny, but rounded her out a little bit more. She is curious and smart and headstrong, but also a little bit insecure because she's small and a girl and trying to do things that people give her resistance on. She'll get very upset about things. I think she has more emotional range than Danny. Danny's just kind of on an even keel all the time. Like, he doesn't get upset, he doesn't get worried. But Danica is a lot more emotional and cares deeply about things. And so there's that aspect that I'm dealing with that wasn't in the original series. So I'm figuring that out sort of on my own, how to portray that. I wanted to ground it a little bit more in reality. Danny Dunn it's somewhere between science fiction and fantasy, because a lot of the science aspects are just really things that couldn't possibly happen. There's a time travel episode, there's gravity paint that makes things float. I wanted to have Danica be a role model for the reader, I show her struggling with things. So Danny doesn't really struggle. He's kind of, they might try something that doesn't work once in a while, but pretty much if he tries something, it's going to work. So I want to show Danica struggling, and I want to show how determined she is. Like she'll struggle with something, but doesn't give up on it. And it doesn't, that I said she was emotional. I think she gets emotional about externalities that get in her way. But when it's herself in a room trying to write a computer program and make it work, she would sit there for hours and not realize time is passing, because every time she runs into one problem, she'll think of 12 possible solutions to try and try them all. Like she's very creative and stubborn about getting around a problem. So I think that's her superpower. Her emotional reactions can sometimes get in her way. So that's her failing, I guess.
Right. So that's one big thing you always hear about when you're character building is like, character has, I don't want to call it a fatal flaw because that's a little bit too Greek mythology, but no character is super interesting if they're always perfect all the time.
Right.
And
Right.
there's a lot of interesting stuff you can read about, like, your character flaw could be something that in a different story would be a bonus to them, like would help them, but because they're in this specific story, it hinders them.
That's a nice thought. That's neat.
In the Shakespearean tragedies, there's always like a big character flaw. I think they were talking about Macbeth versus Hamlet and how if their situations were reversed, they would be in very different places by the end of the story, because Macbeth just acts without thinking too much about it, and Hamlet deliberates for way too long, and they both end up with a lot of murder happening because of that. And if their places were reversed, then they would be able to handle the other situation a lot better, because Macbeth would just be like, uncle, you've married my mother, time to die. Whereas Hamlet wouldn't just immediately murder his competition or be fooled by the tree thing. Anyway, I think character flaws as a specific thing are like a really interesting thing to explore, especially as a way to analyze and engage with the text. Do you guys also find character flaws to be really interesting? Why don't, for this week, you comment down below and tell us what character flaws you find really interesting in a hero, and maybe give us examples, because I don't know, I think that's a really cool kind of topic to explore. What do you think?
I think whininess, like Mark Hamill. God, why can't I think of his name?
Are you trying to think of Luke Skywalker?
Yeah. So like,
I wouldn't say that Luke
Luke
Skywalker's
Skywalker
flaw
just
is whininess.
people tease him about that though.
They do. My friends and I refer to him as Whiny Baby the Second.
Who's the first?
Anakin.
Oh, of course.
No, his fatal flaw is loyalty to his friends. That's why he leaves Yoda's too early.
I mean, that's the kind of flaw you want if you don't want to turn to the dark side.
Well, I mean, it can be good or bad. So, like, Luke does things to help save the people that he loves, but in a good way. Anakin tries to do things to help save the woman that he loves, but in an evil way. So I think everyone has multiple bad character traits, and they just happen to have one very similar bad character trait / good character trait that's influenced differently by the other ways that they grew up or were raised. Like, Anakin grew up in a much harsher, like, every man for himself, I'm a slave kind of situation. Whereas Luke was like raised by two humans who cared about him.
And he was raised on blue milk.
So we're out of time for today. I have to catch a bus and go to my piece for a piece thing. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video and you want to keep following us on our writing journey, remember to click that subscribe button and ring that bell icon so you can be notified whenever I upload a new video. Also, remember to comment down below what your favorite or what you think is the most interesting character flaw or combination of character flaws. Maybe give us a specific character you think has an interesting arc. We will be back next week with another video, and until then, remember,
Two heads are better than one.